All right, welcome to this Coaching Clinic Explainer. Today we're zeroing in on what it actually means to be a manager. You know, early on in your career, you almost certainly learned a critical survival skill, right? Never surprise your boss. You learned to bring bad news forward early, own it cleanly, and handle it. But today, we're going to look at a much harder leadership test. Because the absolute most corrosive mistake a manager can make isn't breaking the rule upward, it's breaking it downward. We're talking about the no surprises rule for your team.
I want you to be really honest with yourself for a second. Have you ever blindsided your team? Have you ever just dropped a sudden, heavy critique on someone out of nowhere? Or maybe you pulled a project from them without warning. Or, and this is a big one, delivered a middling performance review to a team member who honestly, truly thought they were doing great work. Look, when you do this, you aren't just embarrassing them. You are literally shattering their reality. You're telling them that the ground they stand on isn't solid. And the second they realize they can't trust their own read on how they're doing, they're going to stop trusting you.
And here's the uncomfortable truth behind this whole dynamic. Managers rarely surprise their teams out of malice. As a coach, I see this all the time. They do it out of avoidance. It is deeply, deeply uncomfortable to sit someone down and tell them their work just isn't cutting it. So what do? Well, you let it slide, you say nothing, and just kind of cross your fingers hoping it magically gets better on its own. The feedback just gets bottled up. To you, the manager, it feels like patience. But to the employee, it feels exactly like a sudden, brutal ambush.
Okay, so here's our game plan for today's explainer. 1. Define good and bad. 2. Which problems are yours? 3. No surprises at review time. 4. How to bring me a problem. And 5. Name what you value.
Let's jump right into section 1. Define good and bad, making the implicit explicit.
A lot of managers carry their standards completely in their heads. They just assume it's completely obvious what good work or bad work looks like. But when you rely on abstract standards, invisible expectations and unspoken rules, your team is basically forced to play a guessing game. And what happens? Well, some are going to guess too high and completely burn themselves out. Others are going to guess low and inevitably disappoint you. You have got to move to concrete standards. You need to explicitly define which deadlines are absolutely sacred, the exact level of polish you expect before a document ever hits a client's desk, and the real tangible difference between a rough draft and just a lazy one.
Because you've got to remember this absolute truth. People do not resent a high bar. They resent a hidden one. If your people are only learning what your real standard is after they've already missed it, that is a surprise. And honestly, that's entirely on you. Your job as a manager is to state plainly, early, and often exactly what a great outcome looks like. Which brings us to section 2. Which problems are yours? Drawing the lines of ownership.
This right here is easily one of the most common traps new managers fall into. You want to be a great, empowering leader, right? So you tell your team to take ownership. It sounds great. But true empowerment actually requires incredibly clear boundaries and defined territory. If you just tell someone to take ownership without giving them any direction on what they should handle on their own versus what they need to escalate to you, well, that isn't empowerment. That's just abandonment with a nicer name. Without those boundaries, they're either going to escalate every tiny thing, making you wonder why you even promoted them in the first place, or they'll sit on a massive radioactive problem until it's way too big to contain.
So how do we fix this? You need to explicitly calibrate ownership into 3 specific buckets for your team. First, the decisions you trust them to make entirely without checking with you. Just go do it. Second, the situations where you just want a quick heads up, but not a full-blown debate. And third, the handful of truly critical things where you absolutely, positively need to be looped in and in the room before they make a move. By defining this, you give your team the exact territory that is theirs to run. And that clarity, it lets them act with absolute confidence instead of constantly looking over their shoulder.
Moving on to section 3. No surprises at review time, the cardinal rule of feedback.
Listen, if there is only one single principle you take away from this entire explainer, let it be this. Nobody on your team should ever be surprised by the rating they get in their annual review. Never. An annual review must be a summary, absolutely never a reveal. If an employee walks in expecting a stellar rating and gets slapped with a mediocre one, you have essentially lied to them for 12 months. Any concern you raise in that room for the very first time turns what should be a review into a courtroom verdict on a year they can literally no longer change. They are going to feel cheated, and frankly, they should, because you deny them the opportunity to get better.
So the only way to actually make that review a true summary is through regular, ongoing feedback. Make it small, make it frequent, and make it hyper-specific.
When someone knocks it out of the park, tell them that exact week, and detail exactly what made it so great. When work falls short, say so right then while the issue is still fresh and, more importantly, fixable. Waiting 6 whole months to address something just completely robs them of their growth. By the time review season rolls around, your rating should be nothing more than a formal confirmation of conversations you've already been having all year.
All right, Section 4. How to bring me a problem, the recipe for leadership.
Now, just as you owe your team all this clarity, you are absolutely entitled to ask for specific things in return. But again, you can't make them read your mind. You have to explicitly tell them how you want them to approach you when things go sideways. Here's the exact recipe to give them. Number 1, state the challenge clearly in just a sentence or two. Number 2, bring at least a couple of viable options for how we might handle it. And number 3, recommend a path and tell me why. See, when a team member brings you just a problem, they're essentially asking you to carry it for them. But when they bring a problem and 3 ways through it, they are carrying it themselves. Setting the standard doesn't just add annoying bureaucracy, it gives your team the exact blueprint for how to impress you and actually step up into real leadership.
Finally, Section 5. Name what you value. Stop making them decode your moods.
Look, every single manager has hidden preferences that quietly, almost invisibly, shape how they judge their people. And whether you consciously name them or not, they leak out. They leak out in that slight warmth you show when someone does something you love, or the subtle cooling off when they don't. It's usually the seemingly small things, right? Extreme punctuality, jumping on unassigned tasks, figuring things out without asking for help, or on the flip side, submitting half-baked work, or saying "I can't" before even giving it a shot. These might seem like minor quirks, but they completely dictate who you actually trust. And holding these as silent, secret standards and then rewarding or penalizing people against them, it's deeply unfair. Honestly, it's the fastest way to breed this quiet, toxic resentment that slowly hollows out your team.
Because the real kindness is simply to say them out loud, so people aren't left trying to decode your moods every day. When you explicitly name the specific behaviors that earn your respect and the ones that wear it down, your praise and your criticism suddenly stop feeling arbitrary. You're giving the folks who genuinely want to do a good job the exact instruction manual on how to succeed with you.
So here's the ultimate bottom line of all of this. You work incredibly hard to never surprise your boss. But when you do surprise your boss, they generally have the organizational power, the broad perspective, and the job security to absorb that surprise and just move on. Your team simply does not. When you hit your team with a downward surprise, a standard they never knew existed, a rating they didn't see coming, a rule they only found out about by breaking it, you shatter their reality at work. You are planting the seeds of disengagement and a slow, steady morale decline. Remember, the manager nobody is ever surprised by is almost always the manager people most want to work for.
I want to leave you with a pretty provocative thought to chew on as we wrap up. Take a hard look at your own management style. Right now, today, where are you currently most likely to surprise your own team? And what is the one expectation you've been carrying around in your head that you have never actually said out loud to them? Take some time to really answer that for yourself, and then go have that conversation. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep coaching, and I'll catch you next time.